Good evening, everyone. Welcome to another Friday night sit down.
I am Nick.
And I am Nadine. And today we are going to talk about the power of forgiveness in a marriage and moving beyond resentment. So we missed you guys last week. We were not here for a sit down last week. I think what happened with us? We actually came in and we passed out and we were like, oh my gosh, we forgot it was even Friday because we had such a busy week last week. But we are here today. We considered going live, but we thought we would roll out a few more of our podcasts and kind of intermix some between lives and recorded. Is that what we're doing? Okay. So we're talking the power of forgiveness in a marriage and moving beyond resentments. Okay. Would you like to define what you believe forgiveness is in a marriage?
I think forgiveness in a marriage is the willingness to give your spouse or your significant other an opportunity to correct something that's been done incorrectly to you or to a situation that would in the end offend you or upset you. So that's what I think forgiveness is.
That's what you think forgiveness is? Yeah. Okay, so forgiveness for me is, I agree 100% with Nick. It is the ability to allow somebody to correct themselves. And my take on forgiveness from my own womanly standpoint is forgiveness is a learning process. It's definitely something that you work through to let go of anger and possibly resentment towards your partner for whatever the thing that you need to forgive them for is. So we're going to assume, it's easy to forgive your spouse maybe for leaving the toilet seat open. And when you go in there at night, because I know a lot of women have this issue, maybe, you're sleepy, you're groggy, you sit down and you're on the wrong part of the toilet and that happens. So it's easy to forgive for things like that, in my personal opinion. And again, as we go through this topic, we do not claim to have any special expertise other than our personal insights, our experiences, and everything on this channel is the opinion of your hosts. And so we claim full responsibility for the things that we say here on the Nick and Nadine Friday Night Sit Down podcast. So I don't want anybody coming for us and saying, well, that's not a fact. If we do have a factual piece of information, I'll try to remember, or we will try to state that this is actually a fact, because what is a fact? A fact is non-disputable, right?
Yeah.
A pig rolls around in the mud, and that is non-disputable. That's what pigs do. Okay.
Yeah.
Dogs bark, that's non-disputable. So anything that is opinion, we claim full responsibility for. And please, we welcome you in the comment section down below to go ahead and leave your comments in regards to these topics. Okay, so let's get moving. Okay, so it is extremely important to forgive in a marriage because, let's be real, without forgiveness, you are going to struggle in your marriage.
Yeah. I completely agree with that. You have to be able to forgive each other so your marriage or your relationship could flourish and and have both of you guys grow within that relationship. So, yeah, I agree.
So this is something that we have had to learn between ourselves in our marriage about forgiveness. Definitely, I don't think we would be sitting here today if we didn't learn to work through that process of forgiveness, right? And I believe that that is the number one reason. I believe that it is the number one reason why marriages tend to fail, because there is a lot of unforgiveness. And if you go back to basic principles, even basic biblical principles, the ability to forgive is essential in, like, throughout the Bible, right? So we're placed here, and the thesis is that our Creator is expecting that we will have trials, we will have tribulations in every aspect of life, not just marriages. But there has to be some level of ability to forgive, or else our world just would fall apart and would not, it would cease to exist.
Yeah, but there's a but, because you could be in a relationship and you're forgiven, and the question is, when does that forgiveness? When do your forgiveness run out? Is there a limit to forgiving somebody? That's just a question
That is a
for
good
you.
question.
For you,
For me,
yeah.
is there a limit? Okay, so I like to say, okay, so yes, I believe that there is if you're talking about me personally, I believe that there is going to be a limit to my forgiveness. Now, biblically, there probably should not be a limit to forgiveness, right? However, because we're human, and because we do function the way in which we function, you know, there's even biblical guidelines about how to forgive, when to forgive, and we should continuously be forgiving. I have to say that I don't ever like to put a number on something until I'm in the situation. So, what I've learned since I was very young, because I've been, in the real world since I was very young, what I've learned is by watching other couples function. I've learned that, and I've taken a lot of my notes from couples function. So, couples functioning and dysfunctioning. What I've learned is that you should never assume anything until you are in the predicament yourself. So, when you see couples going through a crisis or a problem, I've learned to take a step back. It's easy to form opinions. It's easy to say, this is what you would do, this is what you wouldn't do. But given that circumstance yourself, sometimes it's not that cut and dry. So I don't want to give a number to the times that I would forgive, but I definitely believe in forgiving for sure the first time, potentially the second time, but it's an analysis of, it would be an analysis for me of what the situation was, right? And where I was at in my life.
Yeah. Um. Yeah. That's a good point. But I think forgiveness is I'm willing to forgive somebody, but when that situation become toxic or become hazardous to my health or my well being, and it's gonna cause some type of mental or physical damage, then I would definitely say I would have to draw the line there, and I would have to say, you know what, enough is enough. So that's where my forgiveness runs out.
Okay.
Once the situation become toxic, once the situation become hazardous, or or being a danger to my health and my mental well being, then that's where it runs out. But
Define toxic and hazardous for me in your world.
to me, a toxic means, like
Specific
anything
situations
anything
or
from
scenarios.
like, like you're something affects me in 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 a way, I'm hurting, and you continuously repeat that same mistake, or you continue repeating that same situation over and over, then I would say, I would say that's toxic, because you continuously doing the same thing over, and I'm expressing to you how that particular thing is hurting me, and you continuously do it. So, I mean, at some point, for my well-being, I would have to say enough is enough.
Okay.
So, yeah.
So this is interesting. Is there a number of times to this toxicity or this inability to forgive because of a certain situation?
No, I think it's just based on each person's
Tolerance level, maybe?
tolerance level. Each
Yeah.
person, how much can you take? How much are you willing to take? How is your mental? How are you in that situation? So, I
Sorry, I'm
mean
not
it.
I'm
So
not
I mean
laughing
it.
at what
It
you're
it,
saying. What is your
it
tolerance
varies.
like?
It varies.
Out of
You know what I mean?
curiosity.
I mean, I don't know. I don't know until, like you alluded
Like
to
I
earlier.
alluded.
You don't know until you get to that point, and you're like, okay, enough is enough. So, I mean, that's that's how I'd answer that question right there.
Okay, so I can't put, like I said, a number on it, but I would say that I have quite a big or large tolerance level in comparison to most of society. I would think I wouldn't say it's the biggest, but I would say it is a quite generous tolerance level because I understand how humans work, how humans function, but there's also some other things to consider. You want to consider the exact scenario that you are in, like you said, the toxicity of it, and the safety, your safety, right? So that's a big deal because once there is a dangerous situation involved, like my life is at risk, I don't know that I'd be as willing to have a long-standing tolerance level for a scenario like that, right? As a matter of fact, I know that I would not. Once I felt like I was being threatened or going to be harmed severely, there would be a
And
problem.
I mean, the willingness is always there, but it's for my health, my well-being. It's just wouldn't allow me it wouldn't allow me to forgive, or to be that willing to forgive in that situation, just because my health is at risk and my well-being is at risk. But other than that, I mean, it's I'm always willing to forgive somebody until it start affecting my well-being or my safety.
Okay,
So,
that's fair.
so that's it.
Okay, question for you guys in the comment section. Okay, so I have to stay organized here so we don't go off topic and we don't ramble for endless hours on this podcast today. What does forgiveness mean to you in context of marriage? So when you think about marriage, and please comment in the comment section below, when you think about marriage, what does that mean for you in the context of marriage? And have you ever struggled with an area of forgiveness in your relationship? What do you think is the best way to work situations of forgiveness out if you feel like you're having a struggle? I have a question for Nick. Okay, so Nick is representing some of the men today. I won't say all of the men, of course, because all men think differently. Do you feel that women more easily forgive than men, or that men more easily forgive than women?
That's kind of, I mean, like I said earlier, it all depends. I mean, it all depends on the situation, And I wouldn't say one over the other, because I mean, different people, we're all different. We're all built differently. We all have different feelings. We all, everything is different. So I wouldn't say, I wouldn't clearly cut and say, oh, a woman forgive more than a guy does, because I mean, you hear about a lot of scenarios where a woman would probably, you know, get wrong done, like a guy would do them wrong and they'll forgive. They're more forgiving. Then you hear scenarios where a woman did something to a guy and he's gone. There's no
Okay, so we're
there's
talking
no
in a context of marriage, though.
yeah there's no sticking around. So I mean, but yeah, to answer the question though, I don't think there is.
Because it's not easy. I'm sorry to cut you off, but it's not easy to just walk away from a
Yeah,
marriage,
but I don't
right?
think. Yeah, but I don't think there's one. To answer the question in short, I don't think any is more than the other. I don't think it's one more than the other.
Okay.
So
Well, I beg to differ, and I'm going to say in some instances I agree with you, and in others I don't. I'm not like I'm not I'm not okay, so I'm not I can't even speak, a statistical scientist here. So, and I don't know what the exact numbers are. I think we've spoken or kind of briefly covered things like this on previous podcasts. But I believe in certain circumstances, depending on what the scenario is, women are definitely, in the grand scheme of things, greater forgive, greater able to forgive than men. And I'm going to state my point as to why. There's a lot of there's a lot of women that are in abusive relationships who constantly forgive their spouse for the abuse and they return as if nothing ever happened. That is just one major instance that I could think of. The other major instance is we have some habitual cheaters that run around out here, and they are abusive in the way that they are cheating continuously and constantly. And we have women that constantly take them back or find out about it and take them back. Now, in a situation, so for those two scenarios, so I'm being very specific, I find it very hard to believe that in large numbers that you have men that are being beaten up in their relationships that are just constantly coming back. I'm not saying that there aren't any. I'm just saying in large numbers in comparison to women. So the level of forgiveness there is definitely lower, I would say. And then as far as the cheating goes, men are very finicky when it comes to their relationships. So they tend to covet their wives very heavily. And I don't know. Did I say that right? They tend to, did I say that right? Did I say that right?
sure.
Okay. So they tend to, they tend to keep their wives close by. Emotionally, they tend to be more affected by cheating instances. So they have a hard time, they have a very hard time accepting serious scenarios of cheating. This is uncut, okay, tonight. And I'm not going to edit this video. So it is as you're getting it. It's not going to be polished and pretty. So I'm going to make mistakes because I have a thing with fumbling words sometimes. My thoughts are racing faster than my mouth can. So anyways, men, tend to, they value their wives as wives and they do not want another man putting a hand on their wives. So they have a harder time like accepting things like cheating, instances like cheating than women. Wouldn't you say so?
In most cases
Say yes, Nick.
that you hear, no, I'm getting to that point. But for most cases that you hear in most scenarios, that is the case where like a man has a really hard, or should I say difficult time dealing with being cheated on.
Yeah.
So I mean, it's
So men have a problem with
that's what you
forgiveness in that
that's what you.
in that area.
I would venture
Generally.
off to say yeah. You know what I mean? Like I mean, women do too. I mean, I don't know
Yeah,
any woman
no, women don't like to be cheated on, but I
that
think that
likes to
women are
be.
more likely to work through that than a man.
Yep, that's true. I mean, and it all goes back to our makeup, right? A man is made up completely different than a woman is. So, in that instance, yeah, but I mean, we could get really technical with this too, like, like, okay, we're talking about a physical abuse or whatever the case may be, but there is also verbal abuse. Like, what about
Do
the
you want to grab this
what
for a sec?
about the what about the woman that just constantly verbally abuse their spouse? Like, I mean, he's gonna have to constantly forgive her.
That is
So I
true.
mean, there's so many different ways you could look at this, but for what we're talking about and in the context of what it is for relationship wise, yeah, I would say yeah, I would agree. I would agree that a woman easily forgive when it comes to a guy stepping out on the relationship or whatever. So yeah.
Okay. So we spent quite a bit of time in that area, and we are going to go ahead and move along to resentment. So, what do you think the challenges of resentment are? So, I'm going to say, honestly, cheating is the best scenario for me to use. It could be a million other scenarios out there, but I think that's the best scenario because that's the one that gets our attention most of the time, right? The others, like domestic violence, that is a whole nother ball of wax. So I don't even want to go there because when we're talking about domestic violence, it's an absolute no. So, for the purpose of this podcast, we are going to talk about like forgiveness in representation of cheating. So, the man or the woman has cheated.
Hmm.
There is an attempt to forgive. And I believe it's possible. I believe it's possible that once a relationship has gone through something,
Yeah.
that it can be mended. I know there's a saying, once a cheater, always a cheater. I don't believe that that's necessarily true. And so how, okay, so resentment in the form of buildup. Okay, so he's cheated once, maybe even twice, maybe even three times. It could even be a scenario of she's just finding out about all these times all at once, realizing she's been in this relationship living a lie. She might have inkling, she doesn't have proof. It's a lot of little things that go into cheating and why a woman stays or, what happens there. So one thing I can say is it is very complex. I hear a lot of women that have gone through this scenario say they have so much resentment towards their partner. I've heard things like, I can't look at him anymore. I can't look at him the same. I've heard things like, I'm just trying to think, outside the box, maybe how I would feel and so forth. I can't look at him anymore. I can't be intimate with him
So let me
anymore.
ask you this. So is it is it true forgiveness if you have resentment, or can you forgive and have resentment?
Okay, so we're talking about the power of forgiveness in a marriage and moving beyond resentment, right? So if we're moving beyond resentment, resentment has to be at some point an issue, right?
Yeah.
So if we have issues of resentment, we have to first identify what the resentment actually is,
Yeah.
where it's coming from.
Yeah. But I'm thinking if you I mean, I'm probably guilty of this too, but if you fully and completely forgive somebody, I don't think, in my opinion, I don't think there should be any type of resentment because you wholly forgive that person of whatever the wrongdoing is or whatever the scenario is. So you forgive them unless you forgive them on a condition. You conditionally forgive them. So you have resentment, if that makes sense.
Okay, well, what you're saying has some truth to it, I would say. However, I think there's a process here. So let's say so Stacy finds out that Tom is cheating on her. And, Stacy initially, when she finds out all of this, Tom comes to her and he's remorseful and he's, begging for her not to leave, begging to work things out. There's a level of forgiveness there. So I think forgiveness comes in levels. I don't believe that initially anybody necessarily forgives completely in every area. So so forgiveness, the biggest part about forgiveness is it is a choice. Okay. But because we are human, even though we want to do something and we choose to do something, there's a lot of that doesn't mean we forget. So if you don't forget the scenario that happened, there can start to be a buildup of resentment in that area. I don't know if that makes sense. If I'm saying, does that make sense to you?
I get what you're saying, but
Because if you do something to me, Nick, right? How can I completely forget? Like even though I say, okay, I'm going to try to work it out with you. I'm going to try to get through this and forgive you. I think it's more of an initial, I'm trying to forgive you.
yeah. So that's the thing. That's what I was saying. Like a lot of people, I
That's a
think
good point.
I think we and I'm guilty. Like I said earlier too, we falter to the point of we really don't understand what forgiveness is.
That's the point. Yeah.
You know what I mean? So we're conditionally forgiving somebody. When you have resentment, I truly think when you forgive somebody, you in your heart, you really, 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 whatever the situation is or whatever that person have done, you're looking past that and you're mending those those areas that has been broken. So, but I've seen so often where people have said they forgive somebody, and then that that area is not fully mended. So, for me, I think it's a conditional forgiveness. Like you said earlier, like okay, I'm working on forgiving you, but I'm not fully there yet. So, I mean, that's so do we fully understand what forgiveness is? Are people really forgiving people or is it on a conditional basis? You know what I mean?
Okay.
So
So
that's what I
I agree. I agree. So maybe we should word that differently. So we are working towards forgiveness. But it's hard to tell somebody that has done something wrong. I think it's very difficult to say to them, well, you did this. So I'll work on forgiving you. Because then it kind of frustrates the person. I think most people initially just want to hear that they're forgiven, right? So I think that's where using the word forgiveness comes in loosely, because if you do something to me and you're very remorseful about it and you know within yourself you'll never do this again, but I don't trust you. I think to make you feel better in some ways, I might just say, okay, I forgive you. We'll work through it. But there is going to be resentment because just as a husband covets his wife covets his husband, right? Her husband. Yeah, the wife covets her husband, right? Holds him near and dear to her heart and doesn't want any interference in that, right? So it's hard for her to mentally accept what might have just happened. And as a result, resentment will build.
so I think where we're getting at is forgiveness is a process. It's not something that
It's not an overnight
it's yeah,
thing,
it's something you have to work on.
but you make a
Forgiveness is something you
choice.
have to yeah. I
You
mean
make a
you make a
choice
choice
to want
once
to
you
forgive.
once you commit to forgiving somebody, then the process then you know it's gonna be a process to forgive that person.
Okay, so the big takeaway here with this part, with the resentment part, is if you have been in a situation where your partner has done something wrong, or you have done something wrong, you have to allow the other person a time period
Yeah.
of working through their resentment towards you.
Which is, yeah,
And sometimes that can be rough,
makes
right?
sense.
Sometimes that can be very, very rough. It can be one of those situations where you're just like very impatient because you just want them to like let it go now, right?
Yeah, but that's the thing. If you don't give the person that opportunity, then there goes the resentment peaking up. It's headed. That resentment will always be there because that person did not get the proper time to forgive, to work through that issue, to forgive. So that's my take on it. That's what I think, and just sitting here talking about it, and then I'm kind of processing the whole thing. Have me thinking a little bit more about forgiveness than I usually would. So that's I find that very interesting.
Okay. And I guess the same thing is happening it's like a little mini counseling session because we've been in situations where we've had to go through some of this resentment,
Yeah.
forgiveness. And like, it's a process, it's an ongoing process. So there is okay. So a lot of it is stemming from unspoken frustration. So you want to put a smile on it. You want to move through and move past things. But really, the truth is, and I'm a woman, so I can tell you, the truth is a lot of this is unspoken frustration. Like the things that are going through your mind. You don't want to tell him because if you tell him, you're going to sound crazy, right? I mean, that's the truth. Or you tell him and you're screaming, you're yelling, and you're frustrated. And so this whole entire thing looks like a lost cause. And I can only imagine just as a human being kind of looking from another viewpoint of the person that is basically in the doghouse, that it has to be frustrating to watch somebody constantly getting frustrated. They're frustrated silently. They're frustrated,
Mm-hmm.
you know, and they're not so silent. They are basically displaying their frustration. They're sounding their frustration, and you don't know what to do next. So I'm just gonna put in my 2 cents with that. This is where patience comes in because where you were out, you know, maybe making wrong decisions within the marriage and the marriage has kind of crumbled to a point. The bottom line is you have to exhibit patience. So if you're expecting something on this end called forgiveness, there's going to have to be a level of patience that you never knew that you could ever have on your end. So if you're asking for something almost feeling impossible for the one person, because it feels impossible when you're in it, right?
Mm-hmm.
But you want to do it because you know it's the right thing to do, right?
Yeah.
You may want to do some other things that are not so right, but we choose to do the right things. So, with that being said, on the other end, patience. Is that fair to say?
Yeah. I'd say you have to allow it the process to take to to do its thing so it could work. Because without allowing that process to take place, then I mean I think we're just spinning our wheels if you're not giving that person the opportunity to digest what happened and work through it to get to the place of where that resentment is kind of diminished or dissolve or no longer there. So I mean, yeah. So forgiveness. So obviously, forgiveness ties in with resentment, and to truly forgive somebody, there shouldn't be any resentment. But to get rid of that resentment, you have to go through a process, and that your partner or the person you're with has to allow you and give you that time to work through that resentment. That I mean, that process to get that resentment completely dissolve, so he could have forgiveness. So that's what that's what I think about that. I mean, that's how I think. It's my opinion, guys. Don't come and get me, but that's what I think. If you have something else though, you could share down below.
Go ahead. Yeah, go ahead and share. So I want to ask this question. I had a few questions, but before I get to the questions, so we talked about the patience on the other end, the resentment, and then the patience. So, do you think that there's like other things while you're being patient as the doer or the offender, as you're being patient with the person that is the victim? we're we're gonna label it as that. What else do you think that you can do to help the person that is a victim to heal?
Well, once a person said, "I'm forgiving you," this I think is your job as to help the person go through that process and to facilitate the whole process of helping that person to forgive you through whatever whatever process they have to go through to make sure that that they don't have any resentment towards you.
Part of that process is, I think, building trust building, right?
Yeah.
Trust building. So we're going to go ahead and move it along because we do have to pick up one of our kids shortly. But let's just go through real quick. Just let them know that we'll be there shortly, babe. Okay. So if you guys have gone through anything like scenarios similar, or you know anybody that has been through similar scenarios, because so basically, what do you guys think are some of the common causes of resentment in the marriage? And how do you think resentment impacts your communication with your spouse? Okay, so that's like a big biggie. Big biggie. Because if you're resentful, you're not going to communicate. You're going to clam up. You're going to not want to speak. You're not going to even want to spend time or do activities with the other person, right? So that is a definite biggie. Okay. And there are some, like, I believe the Bible has everything that we need in there. All the tools that we need to communicate, all the tools that we need to function. And is it? Oh, you told them. Okay. So all the tools that we need to communicate, to function, and to live, right? So I definitely am a big believer of consulting the Holy Bible, because the Holy Bible has all of your answers. And in just times of frustration and times of guidance, if you read the word, it can definitely help you to get through those rough patches, because there is nothing too difficult for God to handle. There's absolutely nothing for God that he cannot work through or help you and your spouse to work through. And this is definitely a time to stay close and to pray as a couple, pray for each other, pray together, pray as a family, because that definitely helps to add growth and to help you to be closer. So what is a statistical fact, okay? Now, I don't know, you could look at this in so many ways, but they do say the couples that work through resentment and are able to actually truly forgive each other, they do grow closer than ever before in intimacy. So whether you believe that you can get through it or not, the statistical fact is that you do grow closer and you do like come together. Now, I don't mean just like in one way. I mean like all around as a couple, communicating and so forth. So do you think, because we've been through some of these things ourselves, Do you think that that's definitely like a thing where we've gotten closer than ever before after, say, maybe a particular scenario?
Um, yeah, I would necessarily say closer. I just think, because I don't think, we're always close. It's just, I think certain area of the relationship is highlighted more at that time. So it seems that way. But I think, I think in a relationship, we have to, people throw around the word communicate a lot, but communicate to me is 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 a little bit more than the regular routine day-to-day communicating. I think these kind of conversation, not, we're putting it on tape right now, but these conversations need to be have
You said tape.
in
You're funny.
in
Recording.
a recording,
Yeah.
need to have be halved in a relationship. I think because it is is not only a self counseling session, but I think we could both learn a little bit more from each other, or what it requires from us to make sure that that special person is your spouse or whoever is being satisfied or being pleased or happy or whatever. Like, because you never know, just sitting down talking like this about situations or even a simple word as forgiveness, then it just mushrooms out into other things, and you learn a little bit more, and you understand things that you know in some scenarios probably just take for granted and just go along. But I think having these conversations kind of help in a relationship. Not saying people don't have them, but I don't think people have enough of these conversations. And it doesn't have to be, these conversations should not just be when something happened and you just be like, oh, let's talk about it, or what's whatever, whatever. You know what I mean? So, and it doesn't have to be about bad situations, like you could always talk about things like, like what is love? What's forgiveness? What's resentment?
Like
What's
the
this?
topics that we
What's that?
generally have on
Yeah,
a
the
Friday
topics that
night.
we usually have. Just like now, we are talking, and while we're talking, I'm processing the whole thing, and I've never thought that deep into forgiveness. Now, as we're talking about, and and to see how it ties in with other things, and how it works. So for me, that's interesting.
I would say so. I do definitely feel different about your answer. I think, yes, you're close, but when there's things that shouldn't be happening or are happening in your relationship, there's a level of withdrawal. So I think whatever the close proximity that you had with your spouse was on, an intimate, like a spiritual level. I don't want to keep saying intimate because people misconstrue what intimate means,
Yeah.
right? Intimate can mean many different things. It doesn't have to just mean the one thing. Get your head out of the gutter, guys. So the intimacy level was here. There was a detachment, because when there's a detachment, there something is severed. There's a break right there in the marriage, right? There's a fracture. So there's no way that you can tell me that, oh, we're always close. No, 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 no. So when you come back and you work through these little areas, now the Bible says that you should forgive. What was it, Peter, that said you should forgive 77? Was it 77 times? That's just a number. It doesn't mean you forgive 77 times necessarily. But that's just a number. Was it 77 times? I'm pretty sure that that's what it was. But that's just a number to just display that your forgiveness should be limitless. And I do think if you make a conscious decision to forgive, that there's going to be a natural display of processing through that forgiveness, right? So first you say that you forgive, right? And then you move through the process. The person that is the offender has to move through the process correctly with you. They can't expect for an overnight miracle to happen,
Yeah.
not with a human being, right?
Um,
So, like I said, the Bible shows us how to let go and how to restore things. There's so many different parts that you could hit on in that area. Just do your research, do your little Bible study, and that definitely will help you get through. Okay. So it helps with just the peace in your relationship. So just even in creating a peaceful atmosphere, the energy, making it positive versus negative. And it's something you have to try to pull out of yourself, even when you don't want to. You don't want to. There's things that we don't want to do for our kids, but we know it's essential in taking care of our children. How many of us want to get up in the middle of the night to calm a crying baby? But we have to. It's a necessity, right? And we always feel better for doing what we're supposed to do at the end of the day. Okay. So, practical steps to forgiving. Okay. So, we already talked about it being a mental and physical choice. Okay. On both sides, there has to be some type of action. You, the offender, must have action, and the offender must have action and the victim must have action, and it must align together. Okay. One can't be thinking, well, this is enough, and the other one thinking, well, this is enough. No, no, no. There has to be understanding on both parts. You guys have to be on the same page. Bottom line, it's not going to work if you're not on the same page. Talking about the importance of the forgiveness, because remember, if you think that you're going to be in a marriage and this person did something to you, and then you're just going to hop the marriage and go to another marriage. And if you think in a million years that nothing is ever going to happen to you again in another marriage or another relationship, you have another thing coming. It might be even worse than the first time. So be very cautious in deciding to just sever ties completely without
yeah.
attempting to try. Anything to add to that as far
No,
as...
what I would add to that is, in a relationship or in a marriage, because
There you
since
go, babe.
this is what we're talking about, marriage, pretty much. This when love comes in the scenario. I mean, loving somebody, like that's the reason why you're together. You love each other, so you you express your love in every different way, and you want to be with the person. So I mean, you're willing to work through whatever it is to be with the person. Because I mean, if something happens and you just decide to get up and roll out, I mean, obviously, I don't think that's love, right? I don't think that's loving the person. If the first thing happened and then you said, "Oh, I'm out of here," you know what I mean? So I mean, that's not, for me. That's not really love. You didn't really love anybody, you know. So loving somebody is the willingness to forgive them too, you know. So you gotta have that. So it all works hand in hand. So
I would agree with that. Okay, so there's an emotional and cognitive process in forgiving, and so it's not just about feeling better. I feel better because she forgave me. He feels better because he's forgiven, or vice versa. I hate to keep going he, she, but of course I'm a she and he's a he.
yeah,
So I'm gonna take my stance where I tend to favor, but it's it's about making a conscious decision. So we've said that a few times, and at the end of the day, would you say that you feel more emotionally supported overall because you've gone through the process in the correct manner?
um Yeah, I would think once the process is completed, yeah, you'd have to.
Is the process ever fully complete?
It would have to. That's how you forgive somebody completely. If the process is ongoing, you have resentment. That topic will always come back up. You know what I mean? There will always be a trigger. There will always be this. There will always be that. So you have to work through that whole process and make sure you mend all those broken areas to have a complete forgiveness of whatever wrongdoing or whatever that situation might be. And like I said, I'm guilty for that myself too. Like, I thought I forgive people, but obviously just talking about it, at some point I'm looking back and I'm like, man, I really didn't truly forgive that person, because I mean I have resentment. So I mean, yeah. So
Yeah.
that's what I think.
So forgiveness, there's so many benefits. It's going to restore your intimacy. It's going to deepen your connection with the person that you're with. It's going to strengthen your mutual respect for each other. So there's a level of respect building that is going to, it has to occur if you go through this process the correct way. And
Yeah, and I think when we talk, like, for forgiveness to happen, for it to get to the point for you to forgive somebody, some type of disrespect happened. You know what I mean? Some type of disrespect happened for you to want to forgive somebody. So to what you were saying, I completely agree with what that is saying.
okay. So there's like a level of trust and vulnerability that is allowed. And I think it allows you to feel safe. So you might be dealing with this for a while. And when you don't feel like you're safe in a relationship, that causes a whole nother set of problems, not only for you, but for your spouse. So a lot of people don't understand that your spouse may be acting up when they don't feel safe. Safety is a big, big deal. You can be told a million times all sorts of things, but if you don't feel that safety within your relationship, it means absolutely nothing. Okay?
And I'm gonna veer off a little bit. I think since we're here talking about relationship, love, forgiveness, and all of this,
Not too long because we
and
have something to go do.
yeah, no, it's
Yeah.
not too long, but I just wanted to say that, I mean, I think for a lot of relationship where the distrust come in, or the relationship starts to erode, or where the problem starts to to you know get worse or get bad, whatever the case may be, is, I think, the root of all of that, the nucleus of all of that is lying. Somebody's lying.
Lying. Yeah.
You know what I mean? It always, for me, for what I've seen, and what I've
Experience.
witnessed and experienced in throughout a relationship, is that's always been the center of the issue. Some lie happened. You know what I mean? Some untruth have been told, or has been told for a period of time, and once the truth has revealed, then it's a problem, right? So I think just being truthful will boast good for your relationship, and I think that will eliminate 90% of people's issue, in my opinion.
So, just in closing, I always say to Nick, God forgives us every single day. Like, I have to keep telling myself this daily. God forgives us every single day. So that is even more reason for us to have grace and forgiveness. And that might mean many different things. It doesn't always mean that you will continue in a set relationship, but there's a level of forgiveness and moving forward.
Yeah.
And whichever way. So it's always, it's always my encouragement to work through marriages. Marriage is like of utmost importance and something that should always be attempted to be worked out. But if it can't be worked out, there still has to be a level of forgiveness on another end. We'll be there shortly, okay? We're coming, okay? I'm just finishing up a podcast. Okay. Yeah, so, and the other thing I want to say is just using God's guidance and strength, having an atmosphere of grace within your home for forgiveness, encouraging your kids to do the same thing. That makes a very big difference. And whatever you do, remember these kids are watching. So you're creating little ones that will have the same thought process and the same belief system and the same attitude and behaviors out there in the world. So if you don't have the ability to forgive, you're building a culture of unforgiveness to add into the world. So just keep that in mind. So thank you guys for watching. As always, any last thoughts, Nick?
Yeah. I just think in a relationship we should just stay truthful in whatever it is, and have respect for your partner, and always be willing to forgive. That doesn't mean that because the person know you're gonna forgive them, they should continue to do things.
That's right.
You know what I mean? So
that's a part of the respect.
Yeah, that's part of the respect, right? So I just try to know each other more every day. I mean, every day you're learning each other. So and have these little conversations like we're having. Like this is kind of our little counseling session, so to speak. So but yeah, I'm glad that we could share some of the stuff with you guys that we talk about, and we'll try to do this again next Friday.
Yes, we would definitely try. So our goal,
go live, or am I doing a sit down?
A sit down. Yeah. Our goal is to do at least 3 out of 4 Fridays because, of course, we have a busy household, and it's really hard when you're driving this one to soccer, that one to soccer. We get really tired sometimes, as you often see that Nick is yawning past his bedtime, and we have a little one one of our teenagers to go pick up right now as we speak, and it is quite late, but it's 11 p.m. The sit down is probably going to be put out in the early morning hours, but it is our Friday night sit down, and you guys will definitely be seeing it. So you'll be waking up to in the morning. So have a happy weekend.
This is not like we always say, we're not perfect or whatever. I'm just everything I'm telling you is things that work for us, and 90% of the things is what I've experienced or what we have experienced that worked for us. So something might work for us and it might not work for you, but we're just sharing with you guys what worked for us. So if you have anything, or if you think you've done anything in your relationship that works, topic that we touched on, you could put it below and let us know what you did different, and what worked for you and what didn't work. So until next time,
we will see you guys later, and remember to always place God in the center of your relationship, your marriage, and your life. We will see you guys next time. You guys have a great weekend. Stay blessed, and we will see you later. Bye.